Oh God, I hate this.
I've been most deeply touched by your wonderfully kind and thoughtful good wishes for my health.
In this video, we're diving into one of the most explosive moments in modern royal history. Imagine a day that starts like any other at the palace, but ends with a king making a decision so shocking, it sends tremors through the entire monarchy. We're talking about the day Prince William opened a car's glove box and found something that would change everything. Before we reveal what happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications because this story gets more intense with every twist. And you definitely don't want to miss what comes next. Now, let's jump right into this jaw-dropping tale. Picture this: a royal office transformed into a battlefield of emotions. King Charles sits in his chair, gripping the armrests so hard his knuckles turn white. Every part of his body shows how tense he feels. Queen Camilla stands near the fireplace, her voice shaking with both fear and desperation as she tries to explain herself. Between them stands Prince William, his eyes locked on something sitting on the desk, a silent piece of evidence that's causing all this chaos around them for many years. Charles had been incredibly patient. He'd survived countless scandals, dealt with endless insults, and weathered storms of gossip with remarkable grace. But on this particular day, something inside him finally broke. His normally calm voice cut through the air like a sharp blade. Even the staff members waiting outside the thick doors would have jumped at how intense he suddenly became. Charles wanted answers, real answers, not excuses or clever ways to avoid his questions. Every single time Camilla tried to explain what happened, his anger only grew stronger and more fierce. Her denials and her claims that she had absolutely no idea how this suspicious thing ended up in her glove box just sounded hollow and empty. The trust between them had been completely shattered into pieces. For decades, that's many years, Charles had defended Camilla against people who hated her. He'd protected her from brutal criticism and fought hard for her to be accepted as queen consort. But now, in this incredibly tense moment, he felt betrayed in a way that words couldn't even begin to describe. It was the deepest kind of hurt imaginable. William watched everything quietly, his eyes moving back and forth between his father and Camilla like he was watching a tennis match. He hadn't walked into that office planning to tear their marriage apart, but the evidence he discovered left him with absolutely no choice. His loyalty to the crown, to the royal family itself, was stronger than any personal discomfort he might feel about causing this confrontation. As Charles's voice grew louder and louder, William realized something truly frightening. His father wasn't just acting as a husband dealing with suspicion anymore. He had transformed into a king who had to make incredibly difficult decisions about whether the monarchy itself would survive. This realization cast a dark, ominous shadow over Camilla, leaving her feeling trapped with nowhere to turn and completely vulnerable. Her pleas became more and more urgent, absolutely filled with panic. She insisted over and over that someone was deliberately framing her, that dangerous outside forces wanted to completely destroy their family. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked directly at Charles, desperately searching for the unwavering support he'd always given her before. But the king's patience had completely run out. There was nothing left. The warmth that usually softened his face whenever he looked at her had completely disappeared, replaced by cold, rock-solid resolve that showed no sign of softening. Charles stood up from his chair. His voice boomed across the entire study, declaring that this situation was no longer about personal loyalty or love between husband and wife. This was now about royal survival, about whether the monarchy would continue to exist. He absolutely refused to allow carelessness, whether it was intentional or just a terrible mistake, to threaten the crown that he'd waited his entire life to wear and had fought so long to protect. His order to call security echoed through the entire room, final and completely unavoidable. Can you even imagine being present in that room when those words were actually spoken? What would you have done if you were in Charles's impossible position? The door opened almost immediately, and security guards stepped inside with sharp, disciplined movements. Their eyes quickly scanned the incredibly tense scene without showing even a hint of emotion on their faces. Camilla gasped loudly, turning to face Charles as if sheer willpower alone could somehow make him take back his devastating words. But his expression stayed completely firm and unshaken, like stone. For the first time in many decades, he had placed the importance of the crown above their personal relationship. This was a choice that cut deeper than any scandal, rumor, or betrayal ever possibly could. William remained completely motionless, frozen in place, but the enormous weight of this moment pressed down on him like a heavy, suffocating cloud. There was absolutely no going back from this point, and as security began moving forward and Charles's patience finally broke completely, William understood with absolutely chilling clarity that the monarchy itself was balanced right on the edge of a terrible storm. It might never escape from what was about to happen. Will this storm destroy everything they've built? But how exactly did things reach this horrible breaking point? To everyone watching from the outside world, King Charles and Queen Camilla seemed perfectly happy and content together. On the grand balcony of Buckingham Palace, they would often stand side by side, waving to enormous crowds with the calm grace and dignity that everyone expected from members of the royal family. To regular people watching, it looked like the stormy decades filled with whispers, scandals, and serious doubts had finally settled down into a peaceful period. Charles had finally taken the throne after waiting for years and years, and Camilla, after enduring long periods of scrutiny and harsh criticism, was slowly being accepted by many people as his rightful partner. On the outside, they appeared completely comfortable in their important roles, seemingly at peace with their destiny. But behind those golden palace doors and those perfectly practiced smiles, the palace was never truly calm or peaceful. In recent months, people who worked closely with the royal household had started noticing subtle changes in both of them. Charles, who was always incredibly careful with his words and composed with his emotions, now carried a heaviness that no public ceremony could successfully hide. Camilla, who had once been steady, confident, and seemingly impossible to shake, now sometimes seemed distant and distracted, her mind somewhere else entirely, carrying a burden she absolutely refused to share with anyone. Even during moments of laughter with courtiers, those are people who work at the palace or during charity events captured by photographers' cameras. The quiet tension hung heavily in the air like a shadow creeping slowly beneath all those polished manners. It wasn't the kind of conflict that you could easily name or point to directly, but rather one that simmered quietly beneath the surface, just waiting patiently for a spark to ignite it. This delicate and incredibly tense atmosphere was exactly where Prince William had stepped in with growing concern and worry. Having grown up watching his own family's fragile dynamics play out constantly under never-ending public scrutiny, William had learned over time to trust his gut instincts in ways his father rarely did. He somehow knew when something felt wrong, and he always acted decisively and quickly. In the early autumn of that particular year, during what seemed like a routine visit to Clarence's house, his instincts stirred once more, sending him warning signals. A gathering that had begun as completely ordinary and routine would soon spark a series of events that were capable of shaking the very foundations of royal unity to their core. Have you ever experienced a gut feeling that something was terribly, terribly wrong? The day had started out completely innocently and normally. The palace courtyards gleamed softly under the gentle London sunlight, and staff members moved around with practiced precision, carefully attending to every single detail. William arrived to discuss upcoming royal engagements with his father and exchanged polite, friendly greetings with Camilla, who appeared as gracious and composed as ever, her smile never wavering even slightly. Yet, in those quiet pauses between bits of conversation, William felt something highly unusual brewing. The air itself seemed staged and artificial, as if an invisible wall separated the polished appearances everyone was showing from some hidden truth lurking beneath. His attention drifted almost casually toward Camilla's car, which was parked discreetly in the side courtyard where fewer people would notice. William knew that palace vehicles were always maintained with extremely careful attention and inspected regularly by security staff to ensure everything was perfect. But something about this situation felt off and wrong. Perhaps it was the way the driver lingered much longer than usual before finally handing over the keys. Or maybe it was the subtle way Camilla had quickly brushed off questions about her schedule that particular morning. Whatever it was exactly, a definite sense of unease hung thick in the atmosphere, one that William simply couldn't ignore no matter how hard he tried. At that specific moment, he had absolutely no idea whatsoever that inside the seemingly ordinary compartments of that innocent-looking car lay a secret to one dangerous secret that would soon ignite a confrontation unlike any the royal family had ever faced in their long history. What could possibly be hiding there in plain sight where anyone might stumble upon it? The unusual quiet of Clarence's house stayed lodged in William's mind long after he'd stepped out of his father's private study. The conversation with King Charles had been measured and extremely careful talks about upcoming public appearances, discussions about the fine balance of keeping the public happy while simultaneously carrying the enormous weight of private burdens that royals always carry. Charles had listened carefully, yes, but there had been a noticeable distance in his gaze, a subtle distraction present, as if his thoughts were traveling somewhere far away. William had gradually grown used to seeing that distant look over the passing years. But today something felt fundamentally different about it. Something gnawed at him persistently, bothering him like an itch he couldn't scratch. Perhaps it was the sudden silence that fell immediately after Camilla's polite laugh, a laugh so carefully pitched and controlled, yet strangely sharp and uncomfortable. Perhaps it was the specific way Charles had deliberately avoided making eye contact with her when certain particular topics came up in conversation, a subtle hesitation that definitely didn't go unnoticed by William's observant eyes. Whatever it was exactly, it left William feeling deeply unsettled, with a restless energy that clung to him stubbornly as he walked back slowly toward the courtyard area. There he clearly saw Camilla's car parked perfectly straight to the side. The afternoon sun caught the gleaming surface just right, turning the entire car into a mirror that reflected the palace's flawless, perfect image back at anyone who looked. Everything seemed completely normal and ordinary on the surface. And yet, for reasons William couldn't immediately explain or put into words, he found himself slowing his walking pace. His eyes were drawn powerfully to that vehicle, a pull he would have easily shrugged off as silly on any other normal day. But today felt fundamentally different from other days. There was a strong instinct deep within him, a quiet but persistent tug, one that had successfully guided him many times before in difficult situations. He thought back to the earlier tension he'd witnessed, the subtle stiffness in Camilla's smile that seemed forced, the almost imperceptible pause when she had spoken about her evening plans. William had been carefully trained throughout his life to read people accurately, to sense the hidden currents flowing beneath any calm surface. What he'd noticed in Camilla's behavior had stirred a definite warning deep inside his gut. He suddenly thought of his mother, Princess Diana, and how she had always spoken passionately about listening carefully to the quiet alarms of your heart, those instincts that tell you something's wrong. That exact same inner voice was now pressing on him urgently, strongly urging him not to simply look away and ignore what he was feeling. Would you have trusted that persistent inner voice telling you something was wrong? Camilla's personal driver was nowhere in sight at all. The keys were lying inside the car itself, and palace staff members moved about nearby, completely oblivious to William's growing concern. To anyone else passing by, this scene was completely unremarkable and ordinary, but to William, the sight sparked intense curiosity that he couldn't shake off. He approached the vehicle with careful, deliberate steps, moving silently across the stone courtyard, being extremely mindful not to attract any unwanted attention from people nearby. A guard stood positioned far off in the distance, clearly distracted by something else, which gave William a rare private moment to investigate without being watched. He rested his hand lightly on the car's surface, and his own reflection stared back at him in the highly polished paint. A quick pulse of unease ran through his entire body. Though he couldn't logically explain exactly why he felt this way, with deliberate care and caution, he opened the door smoothly and slid into the seat as naturally as if he belonged there. and had every right to be sitting in that car. At first glance, absolutely everything seemed perfectly ordinary and normal. There was the faint, pleasant scent of leather filling the air, the spotless dashboard without a single smudge, and neatly folded papers tucked carefully in the side pocket. Yet despite all this normalcy, his attention kept returning again and again to one small, easily overlooked compartment that most people would never think twice about: the glove box sitting right there in front of him. His fingers hovered uncertainly over the handle, with hesitation coiling uncomfortably in his chest like a tight spring. One voice inside his head whispered softly to leave it alone, to simply walk away and ignore these stirrings of suspicion that were probably nothing. Another voice, sharper and more insistent, insisted firmly that the truth very often hides in plain sight, right where people least expect to find it. William took a long, steadying breath to calm his racing heart and pulled the glove box open with a decisive motion. The soft click it made seemed insignificant and tiny at first, but in that particular moment it rang louder in his ears than any royal announcement could. Inside that small compartment was nothing casual or trivial whatsoever. What he saw with his own eyes made his blood absolutely freeze solid. This was a discovery that would ignite a storm so powerful that the palace walls could no longer possibly contain it. The calm, peaceful period had completely ended. The first flash of lightning in this terrible storm had just struck. What on earth could cause such an extreme reaction in a prince? For a long, frozen moment, William just stood there completely still, unable to look away or move from what lay before his eyes. The glove box's small, unassuming compartment that in every other car on the planet might hold only old receipts or perhaps a packet of breath mints had revealed something completely unexpected inside Camilla's vehicle. Among the neatly folded papers and the faint scent of peppermint, there rested an object that seemed utterly, completely out of place in every possible way. It wasn't something any person might carry along for a charity event or a casual afternoon drive around town. Though William couldn't quite define it at first glance, it radiated secrecy, clear intention, and genuine danger all at once. William's pulse spiked dramatically, his fingers trembling slightly as he carefully reached in to touch it. The moment his skin made contact with the mysterious object, he felt much more than just its physical weight pressing against his palm. It was the crushing weight of meaning, of serious consequences that would follow from this discovery. The air inside the car seemed to grow noticeably heavier and thicker, pressing in uncomfortably around him from all sides. Slowly and deliberately, being extremely careful, he pulled the item fully into the light where he could examine it properly, his eyes scanning it in complete disbelief at what he was seeing. His mind raced frantically, desperately trying to make logical sense of why this thing was there at all in Camilla's possession. This was absolutely no trivial trinket you'd forget about. No innocent note tucked away by simple mistake. Whatever this object was exactly, it carried implications that reached far, far beyond Camilla herself as an individual. If the press ever discovered its existence, the entire monarchy could be thrown violently into another massive storm. One it genuinely might not survive this time around. Carefully, almost reverently, as if handling something sacred or dangerous, William placed the object back down in the glove box, as if the thing itself could somehow burn through the leather seats with its mere presence there. Countless questions flooded his mind all at once. Had Camilla personally placed it here herself, or had someone else slipped it in secretly without her knowledge or consent? Each possible scenario twisted and turned in his mind into darker, more deeply unsettling possibilities that made him feel sick. Slowly and deliberately, he closed the glove box completely, the latch clicking shut with a sound that felt absolutely final, like a seal being permanently set on something irreversible that could never be undone. Can you even imagine the crushing weight of discovering something like that? Stepping out of the car carefully, William's gaze swept quickly over the entire courtyard. Staff members moved about as usual, completely oblivious and unaware that something absolutely monumental had just shifted dramatically behind the palace walls. He adjusted his jacket with shaking hands, taking a long, deep breath to steady himself. and began walking back toward the main hall with measured steps. Each individual step felt heavier than the last one, burdened terribly by the weight of what he had just seen with his own eyes. He knew instinctively, without any doubt, that this was absolutely no ordinary matter that could be swept under the rug. It demanded immediate attention, and it demanded it right now without any delay whatsoever. His thoughts immediately went racing to his father. King Charles had always valued loyalty above almost everything else, had always stood firmly by Camilla through absolutely every scandal and storm they'd faced together. But how could he possibly react to this discovery? This wasn't just gossip or another tabloid rumor that would fade away. This was real, tangible, and it was genuinely dangerous to the monarchy itself. William's heart raced uncontrollably as he replayed the shocking discovery over and over in his mind. His instincts had been absolutely right all along, successfully guiding him to that small, hidden glove box, a tiny pocket of truth that had been lying in plain sight all along, waiting to be discovered. Now the vivid memory of it was permanently etched into his mind, impossible to ignore or forget no matter how hard he might try. He faced an incredibly difficult choice that would change everything. Should he confront Camilla directly about what he found, risking her immediate anger and complete denial of everything? Or should he go straight to his father first, knowing full well that this revelation could completely fracture the fragile bond between husband and wife forever? The silence inside the palace no longer felt peaceful or calm in any way. It was electric and tense, crackling with energy, exactly like the air feels just before a massive thunderstorm when you hear the first distant rumbles echoing ominously in the distance. William realized with a horrible, sinking certainty deep in his gut that this secret absolutely wouldn't stay hidden for long. Secrets, especially those tucked away carelessly in glove boxes, had a persistent way of eventually surfacing and revealing themselves. And this particular one would demand nothing less than a complete reckoning. What would you have done if you were standing in William's shoes right then? William didn't waste even a single moment thinking about what to do. The vivid image of what he had discovered in Camilla's car burned so incredibly brightly in his mind that hesitation was completely impossible. He moved through the long, echoing corridors of Clarence's house with a firm, purposeful stride, each step carrying the heavy weight of someone who knew beyond doubt that the next conversation he was about to have could fundamentally change everything. Forever. Guards positioned at various doors straightened up automatically as he passed them, completely oblivious to the storm of information he carried with him, a storm that could potentially unravel the carefully maintained facade of the entire monarchy. When he finally reached his father's private study, he paused for only a single heartbeat, gathering all his resolve and courage before stepping inside without any ceremony or announcement. Charles sat behind his large desk, leafing through various papers with a distracted air about him. The precise moment he looked up and saw William, his expression shifted dramatically, with weariness melting away into curiosity at the unexpected sight of his eldest son. William closed the heavy door firmly behind him, his eyes locked intensely on his father's face. For a long, incredibly tense moment, silence hung heavily in the air between them like a thick, heavy curtain blocking all sound. Then William finally spoke. His voice was low and controlled, but absolutely every word carried the unmistakable urgency of undeniable truth that couldn't be ignored. He explained in clear detail exactly what he had seen, exactly what he had taken from Camilla's glove box, and all the chilling implications that naturally followed from this discovery. Charles listened in absolutely stunned silence, his face growing paler and paler as each terrible detail fell into place like puzzle pieces. His hands pressed together firmly on the desk as if physically bracing himself against the crushing truth. For what felt like an eternity, he said absolutely nothing at all, searching William's face desperately for any hint of exaggeration or mistake. Finding none whatsoever, he exhaled slowly and heavily, a sound tinged with both disbelief and terrible dread about what this meant. Finally, the king spoke, his tone quiet yet edged with steel that showed his authority. He asked William directly whether he could be absolutely certain about what he saw, whether there was any possible chance of mistake or misinterpretation of what he'd found. William's reply was completely unwavering and rock solid, leaving absolutely no room for doubt. Have you ever had to deliver news that you knew would completely break someone's heart? Then Camilla entered the room. She moved into the study with her usual poise and grace, but her confident smile faltered noticeably and quickly when she immediately saw the grave seriousness written across both their faces. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud, and in that precise instant, the tension in the room thickened dramatically and became almost unbearable. William's jaw clenched tight, his gaze fixed sharply and unwaveringly on her. Charles rose slowly from his chair, his usual calm completely replaced by a rare, taut alertness that showed something serious was happening. The king's voice, when he first addressed her directly, wasn't filled with anger. Instead, it carried a deep weariness, the weary hope that somehow she could explain away the dark shadow that William's discovery had cast over their union and their life together. He asked, plainly and directly, about the glove box, about what had been found hidden there. Camilla froze completely still. For a fleeting moment, her careful composure cracked wide open, revealing genuine shock and surprise. She quickly recovered though, denying any knowledge whatsoever of how that item had appeared there, insisting firmly that someone must be deliberately trying to set her up and frame her. Her voice trembled with indignation and hurt. Yet somehow, every single word she spoke only deepened the unease filling the room. Charles's eyes, which were usually soft and gentle whenever he looked at her, hardened visibly with suspicion, a look William had rarely, if ever, seen before. The confrontation escalated quickly and dramatically. Voices rose higher and higher, echoing loudly against the ornate silence of the study. Camilla pleaded desperately. Charles pressed harder for answers. William stood completely unwavering in his position. Decades of carefully managed royal reputation seemed to teeter dangerously on the very edge of complete collapse. At last, Charles reached his absolute breaking point. His patience snapped completely and his authority as king demanded immediate action. He issued a command that stunned even those people familiar with his occasional temper. Security would be summoned immediately. The crushing weight of those words hung heavily in the air. Sharp and completely unrelenting, William stood motionless, hearing the absolute finality in his father's voice. Camilla's face drained of all color instantly. Her composure, once absolutely flawless and perfect, faltered badly under the terrible gravity of what was unfolding before her eyes. The king's decision was deliberate and completely unmistakable. This was absolutely no ordinary family confrontation. Something fundamental had shifted forever, and there was absolutely no turning back from this point. What could possibly drive a king to such an extreme measure against his own wife? The object William had found in that glove box was much more than just a private embarrassment that could be hushed up. It was tangible proof and a clear sign of something far more deeply troubling. It bore specific markings that connected it directly to shadowy figures, operating outside the palace, dangerous individuals, whose names were whispered only in the secret corridors of power by those in the know. It suggested contact, ongoing correspondence, or dangerous influence that absolutely no member of the royal family should have ever entertained or allowed. Charles demanded to see it again immediately. William hesitated briefly, torn between his desire to protect the monarchy and his need to reveal the complete truth. With steady hands, he carefully placed it on the polished desk. The king leaned forward, eyes narrowing as the golden lamp light reflected off the mysterious object. Recognition dawned slowly and his breath caught in his throat. This was absolutely no rumor or gossip. This was undeniable, substantial reality that couldn't be ignored. Camilla moved closer, her voice breaking with emotion as she insisted desperately that she didn't know how it had come to be in her POS session. She pleaded urgently for them to seriously consider the possibility of an elaborate setup, a carefully planned plot by dangerous enemies aiming to fracture the family from within. Her words were passionate and heartfelt, but they were lacking the solidity and proof Charles needed to believe her. His questions came sharper and louder. demanding clarity that never arrived no matter how much she tried to explain. Experts were quietly called to verify the item carefully. Their conclusion, cautious yet firm, confirmed William's certainty without any doubt. It was genuine and real. Its presence in Camilla's possession couldn't be dismissed or explained away easily. Either she had knowingly kept something damaging, or she had been recklessly compromised by someone. Both options were equally damning for Charles to accept. Could there be any explanation that would make this situation right? The revelation struck directly at the very core of his reign as king. Decades of careful effort to bring Camilla from the edge of scandal into acceptance now risked unraveling completely in an instant, all because of a single item hidden in the depths of a glove box. His face, usually an unyielding mask of royal control, betrayed rare vulnerability. He looked not like a powerful king, but like an ordinary man confronting the complete collapse of trust he had fought so incredibly hard to build over many years. William, despite the genuine pain of seeing his father so shaken, felt grim determination settle over him like a heavy cloak. The monarchy couldn't possibly ignore this discovery. Silence, denial, or delay would only invite complete disaster once the truth inevitably leaked beyond the palace walls to the public. The glove box revelation wasn't merely about Camilla as an individual. It was about the survival of the crown itself. The crushing weight of that truth pressed down heavily on all three of them. The walls of the study, heavy with centuries of history and tradition, seemed to lean in closer, demanding a reckoning. What had been uncovered was no ordinary secret that could be hidden. It was a test of loyalty, integrity, and the very strength of the monarchy. For Charles, the choice he would make in the hours ahead would define not just his reign, but the entire future of the royal family itself. When does duty to the crown outweigh personal love? The heavy door thudded shut behind the guards, and the exact moment it did, Camilla's carefully maintained composure finally shattered into pieces. For years, she had endured whispered rumors, harsh public criticism, and relentless headlines attacking her. Yet none of it compared to the raw humiliation of being treated like a suspect inside her own home. Her voice trembled as she faced Charles, hands stretched out toward him. Eyes wide with fear and disbelief, she pleaded with him to stop, to remember everything they had endured together, to recall all the battles they had faced side by side. "This isn't just about an object in a glove box," she said, voice quivering with emotion. "This is about trust, about us, about the life we've built together against impossible odds." Charles didn't move a muscle. His eyes, once warm and reassuring whenever he looked at her, were now cold and unyielding. In that moment, he had made a choice, placing the weight of the crown above her. Her words seemed to vanish into the silence, unanswered, leaving her desperation echoing off the walls. She turned then to William, searching desperately for an ally, a hint of sympathy, but found only a prince whose resolve was shaped by duty rather than emotion. His face was calm, firm, and unshaken by her pleas. She raised her voice, breaking into cracks of emotion, repeating her innocence again and again. She insisted she had been set up, that enemies of the monarchy had planted the incriminating item to create division within the royal family. Her warnings were urgent. By doubting her, they were feeding the hands of those who wanted the monarchy destroyed. Her words carried a raw, undeniable truth. Yet, the suddenness and intensity of her protest made it difficult to discern whether it was honesty or a desperate performance of survival. Could she be telling the truth about being framed? The guards lingered near the doorway, a constant, silent reminder of Charles's command. Every second they stayed heightened, the sense of finality pressing down on her. Camilla's shoulders trembled as she sank into a chair, hiding her face in her hands. Her tears weren't staged for cameras. They were the uncontrolled sobs of a woman whose world seemed to collapse in real time. Between sobs, she spoke of her sacrifices, the endurance it had taken, the years she had remained by Charles's side. Even when walking away would have been easier, for a brief moment, something flickered in Charles's expression, a shadow of the man who had once defied tradition to be with her. But the weight of the crown was heavier than anything else, and his silence cut deeper than any words could. To Camilla, it wasn't just rejection. It was a confirmation that her place beside him was no longer certain. The study, steeped in centuries of history, seemed to bear witness to a queen consort stripped of dignity before her husband and stepson. Her pleas had failed to sway them. Realizing this, a chilling quietness fell over her. She lifted her head, eyes red but steady, and whispered, "If you truly believe I'm guilty, then perhaps you have already chosen a future without me." Her words hung in the air, fragile yet weighty, carrying the unspoken possibility that the royal family had crossed a line from which there could be no return. Was this truly the end of their partnership? Camilla's last words lingered in the study long after they left her lips, echoing like a warning no one could ignore. The room, once alive with raised voices and desperate pleas, had fallen into a silence so thick it pressed on the chest. Charles stood near his desk, shoulders taut, his face a mask of controlled tension, while William remained frozen, eyes fixed on the polished floor, as if trying to make sense of the storm that had just passed. Even the guards at the door, trained to remain unreadable, shifted with an unmistakable unease. Everyone in that room felt it. This was no longer just a family quarrel. This was a full-blown royal crisis. As the news slipped through the corridors of Clarence House, it spread not in official reports, but in hushed whispers. Staff exchanged wary glances, voices low, words carefully chosen. They had long been used to managing rumors, putting out small fires before they grew. But this felt different. The very air seemed charged, as if the house itself had held its breath waiting. Behind closed doors, Camilla retreated, accompanied only by a handful of loyal aides who seemed uncertain what to do. The queen consort, once commanding any room she entered with undeniable authority, now appeared fragile and shaken. Her desperate pleas to Charles had met only disbelief, and the sting of being doubted by both her husband and her stepson weighed on her like a lead cloak. Some aides tried to console her, others, less sympathetic, whispered that perhaps this reckoning had been a long time coming. How could the palace ever recover from this? Meanwhile, Charles attempted to maintain a veneer of composure, forcing himself to continue with endless briefings, documents requiring signatures, and the appearances that never stopped. Yet, his mind remained tethered to the object that still rested on his study desk. It was no longer merely evidence. It had become a symbol of the monarchy's fragility, a stark reminder of how trust could vanish and stability crumble in an instant. He knew that calling security on Camilla wouldn't remain a secret forever. Once a decision like that is set in motion, the world eventually finds out. William withdrew into measured silence, grappling with the weight of his actions. He had acted out of loyalty to the crown, but the image of Camilla's tear-streaked face haunted him. The palace machine was relentless, and once doubt was planted, it rarely faded. Yet, he also knew that doing nothing would have been far worse. The monarchy survived on perception, and any weakness hidden within its walls would sooner or later be magnified for the world to see. His choice had been harsh, even brutal, but he believed it was necessary. Through the night, Clarence House buzzed with uneasy energy. Advisors debated strategies to contain the situation if it leaked. Servants shared fragments of gossip, each retelling adding new embellishments. Some feared scandal. Others feared something deeper, that the family itself might never fully recover from the rupture now exposed. By morning, the shock hadn't lessened. If anything, it had grown heavier. What had begun as a private confrontation in the study now sent ripples through every corner of the palace. The monarchy's carefully constructed image of unity now hung by the thinnest of threads, and everyone within those walls understood the unspoken truth. If that thread broke, the world would watch the unraveling piece by piece. What does tomorrow hold for the royal family? The morning sun rose over London in its familiar brilliance, spilling golden light across the rooftops and cobbled streets. But inside the elegant walls of Clarence House, the day carried a weight far heavier than the light outside. The confrontation from the previous night still lingered, thick and suffocating, like a storm cloud refusing to break. Staff moved carefully, their steps quieter than usual, voices lowered to whispers, as if the very walls themselves might listen and judge. No one dared ask aloud what had happened. Yet the tension was palpable. everyone sensed that something profound, irreversible, had been set into motion. King Charles began his day with the precision and poise expected of a monarch. His attire was flawless, his briefings on state matters meticulously reviewed, yet his face betrayed him. The lines of sleepless hours were etched deep, his eyes distant, his demeanor unusually heavy. He had faced countless political storms, public outrage, and personal tragedy, but this felt unlike anything he had ever endured. Public appearances could mask the calm exterior of a king. But behind closed doors, he wrestled with the most agonizing choice of his reign, whether to continue defending the woman he had loved for decades, or to place the crown and the continuity of the monarchy above all else. Camilla remained secluded in her private quarters, refusing meals, company, or comfort. Her once unshakable confidence had shattered, splintering with every memory of the study. Replaying the confrontation again and again, was she truly the victim of a deliberate setup, as she had pleaded in desperation, or had her own carelessness allowed others to exploit her position? The realization that her husband had chosen suspicion over trust cut deeper than any scandalous headline ever could. For the first time since marrying Charles, she wondered if her place at his side was truly secure. Can a marriage survive such a betrayal of trust? Prince William spent the morning in quiet reflection, the weight of his choices pressing heavily on him. He knew that his actions had set the current turmoil into motion. While he felt no regret for revealing the truth, he couldn't escape the consequences it had unleashed. His loyalty was not to any single person, but to the monarchy itself too, an institution that had weathered centuries of upheaval and remained a symbol for millions. Yet the cost of his decision was now painfully evident. He had driven a wedge deeper into his family, one that might never fully heal. Meanwhile, advisors gathered discreetly, discussing strategies should news of the confrontation escape to the press. They debated how to shape the narrative, how to frame events in ways that could preserve dignity. Yet, beneath their careful plotting lay a silent acknowledgement. The real challenge wasn't the media, but the family itself. No amount of spin or staged appearances could mend a fracture that ran this deep. If the cracks continued to widen, the monarchy itself would carry the scars for generations. As evening approached, Charles stood by a window overlooking the palace gardens, the sprawling city beyond, stretching endlessly into the distance. He thought of his coronation, of the vows he had taken, of the long journey that had brought him to this moment. He understood more than ever that the crown was larger than any single person, larger even than himself. The decisions he faced now wouldn't only determine Camilla's future, but could shape the destiny of the monarchy itself. And as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting the city in shades of crimson and gold, one truth became undeniable: the storm had only just begun. What will Charles choose? His crown or his queen? The palace might never reveal every detail of what transpired behind closed doors. But one thing is certain: the discovery in Camilla's glove box ignited a firestorm, one that could forever alter the very heart of the monarchy. The question now remains: can the royal family survive this crisis? Or will the weight of this secret bring down everything they've worked to build? So what do you think about everything that happened? Was King Charles right to call security on Camilla after what William discovered? Or did he go too far? Do you believe Camilla was really framed by enemies, or was she hiding something all along? Could William have handled this situation differently, or did he do exactly what needed to be done to protect the monarchy? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We genuinely want to hear what you think about this absolutely unbelievable royal drama. And if you found this story as shocking as we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel with notifications turned on so you never miss another jaw-dropping royal revelation. The monarchy's future hangs in the balance, and we'll be here to bring you every stunning development as this incredible story continues to unfold.